Yo, what it do, YouTube? It is your boy Culture Shock. We are back with another video. It's going to be film room versus stats. So, there's a bunch of people that think, oh, numbers don't lie, stats this, stats that. And then on the other hand, it's like, okay, but if you're not watching film, you don't know what you're talking about. So I got two people here that knows pretty much about film and stats. On the left, I got my guy Jake with me. He is a stat guy. And at the bottom, I have Michael Terrazas of the Blue Stable. He loves film. So I got both of these guys here. How are we doing tonight, Jake?
Doing good, doing good. I also want to add, I love film too. I just also love stats, and I work with data and analytics and stuff like that in my job. So I just naturally gravitate that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Michael, how we doing down there at the bottom, man?
Look, man, I can say that we are much different. But other than that, getting away from my Call of Duty Zombies right now to talk some football, even though I got on Zombies to get away from football, but I can't resist when I get an invite, man. I really can't. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation, just chilling on a Saturday night. Another parlay blown, but at least it was because my TCU Horned Frogs beat Texas Tech. So, oh, well.
Yeah, I definitely seen that game. It was a good one. So we're going to hop straight into it. Stats versus film guru and no other. I'm going to let the stats guy, Jake, even though he say he likes film too, but I'm going to let Jake, Mr. Chartman, go first about what's more important, or are they both important? Stats versus film room. You're up.
I definitely think you need to use them both. Like they're equally important, right? So basically how I look at it is, maybe you start with stats, right? You look at, for example, maybe you'll see a quarterback's, without naming any names, a quarterback's completion percentage and his touchdowns and his interceptions, and you see good numbers, but you also, there's a disconnect with the franchise, or the team didn't win much and the offense as a whole was inefficient, and you wonder why. So you go back and you look at different stats. You look at things like on target throws, or you look at things like completion percentage over expected. And my two favorite, which are EPA and DVOA, which are like these advanced statistics that kind of have a little bit more that go into them. And what you start to get is a more clear picture. Once you have a little bit more of a clearer picture from a stats perspective, then you can take that mindset, go watch film, and see where or why those stats came to be, because those things are just numbers. So you might see things where, like, okay, so there were a lot of wow plays, but there were a lot of in-breaking timing routes that just didn't pan out, missed them, you know what I mean, didn't read the defense correctly, or just threw behind the receiver and couldn't be caught. Whatever the story is, you start to see why the completion percentage over expected isn't what you thought, or why the DVOA was lower than you thought. Because, yeah, the 40-yard bomb is awesome, and we all remember that. But 80% of the throws you're going to make in the NFL are those in the 5 to 10 to 20 yard range. So you start getting a more clearer picture once you start seeing how they kind of work together.
Okay. I see your point here. All right. That was a good point too. I'm not going to lie. Definitely are both important. Now we're going to go to Michael Terrazas with the film room. Why is it important, or is it more important than stats? Go ahead. You are up.
Jake hit it on the head. Both are important. Both are used. I mean, stats weren't really that big. Analytics, really, let's be specific. Analytics wasn't really that huge. But up until, I want to say about maybe in 2017, everyone really started catching on. Everybody really started getting into it. Every NFL organization has an analytics guy, an analytics department. It's now in the NBA. It's in baseball. How is it in baseball? I don't know. I'm not a baseball guy. But it's taking over sports a lot. And when it comes to stats, I mean, one of the biggest things that I really dislike when it comes to people bringing up so much stats is when I've had interesting debates across Twitter, especially this past couple of years, the defense, for example. Everybody knows my thing against the defense, Eberflus, all that stuff. And what Jake had mentioned earlier, DVOA, everybody kept saying, well, the defense isn't the problem. They're top 10 in DVOA. I'm like, so if they're top 10, then why are they consistently losing these games? Like, what is the stats saying? Because they're not good in the fourth quarter. They're not good against the pass. They're not good at getting after the passer. Oh, but the turnovers don't win games. We were just second in the league in turnovers, and we didn't even make the playoffs. The Cowboys were number 1 in turnovers. They lost to Jimmy Garoppolo in the wild card round. So exactly tell me how all these numbers kind of help. And when I look at, take a look at the quarterback, touchdown to interception ratio. That's one of the big, people want to say that's one of the big indicators on how a good quarterback is. That's one of the most lying metrics that there is to use, because if you look at Carson Wentz, Jake didn't want to say it, but I'll say it. If you look at Carson Wentz, 27-7, man, that's a really good year. Colts had a good year. They had a good offense. No, they didn't. He did do a good job of not, throwing as many, but every single turnover was so bad. Every single one. I mean, it wasn't just a turnover. It was a game-killing, a drive-killing, momentum-killing turnover, which you couldn't have. And then the touchdowns. A 3-yard touchdown pass, that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. A 7-yard touchdown pass. The touchdown to Jonathan Taylor through a screen, he took it to the house, but it's counted as, what was it, a 63-yard touchdown? Or maybe not that much, maybe like a 47-yarder. And then you go to the Oakland game the second game of the season, second to last game of the season, when you played the Oakland Raiders, you threw a bomb down the field. It was tipped up in the air, but it was a touchdown for T.Y. Hilton. Credited yards, Carson, reception for T.Y.
I saw that throw and I was like, I know that was awesome because we got a touchdown, but that was a bad decision.
That was a very, very bad decision. A couple of, even like earlier in the year when we kept talking about how our best play is the downfield, just the lob, because we were forcing defensive pass interferences, they were still a little bit off. I mean, a jump ball is meant to be underthrown because you're jumping, not leaping, you're jumping for the ball. So, but when you look at a couple of them, Michael Pittman was like right near the 50-yard line, and then he has to go like 3 yards to the right because it was so off target that he had to go with it. But when I look at the stats and everything, and of course, when it came to the defense, everybody was giving me the stats. Oh, they're top 10 in DVOA. They're top 10 defense. They're top 10 in points allowed, turnovers, yards. And then I turn on the film. I'm not seeing those stats. I'm not seeing them because in the fourth quarter, you're bad. You're giving up runs. You're giving up lots of pass. I'm stuck saying, where is it? Are you just talking about in the first quarter when nothing's on the line, the second quarter when nothing's on the line? And I am, I wouldn't say sensitive. I'm understanding to stats. I'm not the biggest guru in it. If Jake and I got into a conversation about analytics alone, probably 60% of it, I wouldn't know what the hell he's talking about, if I'm being honest with you. I wouldn't. I haven't dug that deep into it, and I'm more than welcome to sit down and get more educated on it because, I mean, look, I'm just Michael Pevia from the Blue Stable. I'm not for ESPN. I didn't have Kurt Warner as my dad or anything. I'm not a know-it-all in football, okay? I'm probably pretty stupid when it comes to analytics. But I see analytics used way too often when it comes to air yards per attempt, the yards after catch. When we talk about those things, air yards per attempt, I kind of see that kind of on film. I see the plays, if Carson Wentz, if I had to ask Jake right now, I'm not sure if he would have it. So if he has it, I don't want to put him on the spot. But if I was to ask for Carson Wentz air yards per attempt, I would maybe guess it's probably top 10 or top 15 in the league because he's not going small. He's not taking the check down. He's not doing any of that. He's going for the 15, the 20 yards, the 10 yards, the 17 yarders. And it's just mind-boggling to me. But this is really a talk about stats and film. So I'm not trying to get big into the film actually, but it can lie, but both can also lie as well.
Yeah. I think his average depth of target was like, I think it was like pretty low. I think it was below 15th. So below half. But because there was that whole where I was like, he's taking the 11th longest time to throw, but below 15th in his like depth of target. So it's like, he's holding on to the ball, but what was he doing with it? Wasn't dropping bombs. But I think so. Like for example, like the DVOA, right? Like so, like the defense for the Colts is 10th in DVOA, and the offense was actually 13th. So it's like the Colts, for all intents and purposes, had a very good team, and I think we all understand that, right? So like the Colts were a good team for a large part of it. This is where like stats get misused, as Michael says, right? When not everything is accounted for in football. There's a ton of variables in football that aren't accounted for, but you still should take analytics and stats into consideration when you're trying to find out the questions that Mike is asking. Like, all right, why is the defense blowing these leads and stuff like that with all these turnovers and stuff like that? One of the things is you could have a train of thought like this, right? So there's a lot of turnovers. The defense the Colts blow leads. They don't capitalize on leads. And how is that possible when you generate so many turnovers? Like, that doesn't seem to check out. So then you check the Colts offense, and it's 13th. And you're like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, so with a good scoring or with a good DVOA offense and a good DVOA defense, how does this not turn into like more solid wins? Then you look at like, say, the quarterback position. Not that this isn't supposed to like be a whole dog on Carson Wentz, but he's 16th, right, in DVOA, and he's for his like EPA from weeks like for a large part of the season was negative, and EPA is expected points added, which basically is just how much value that play was. Give it like how much value that play was in terms of like moving your team to scoring. So you start to see like, okay, so like Jonathan Taylor's DVO, he's probably, I don't have it on hand, is probably like super high. So really what you're seeing is like, all right, the defense got a lot of takeaways and the offense ran the ball really well and was able to score a lot based off of the running back and a little bit off the quarterback. But when you really need the quarterback to put the game on and win it and seal these games, there was a bit of up and down play there. There was a bit of validity. You couldn't really trust him to do that. So, there's fault for the defense for giving up those large yardages. I mean, I think we averaged like, the amount of air yards that we let was quite a high number. But then there's also something to be said about like offense not taking the chance of all these opportunities given to them by the defense and stuff like that. So a lot of this is symbiotic between the offense and defense. I mean, that's what football is. That's why they call it a team sport. And one of the misconceptions with stats is like, you shouldn't use just one as like we just use DVOA, and because the defense and the offense was 10th and 13th, like that means that this team is good, or like this is good, this is the explanation, or and when this explanation doesn't, when these numbers don't match this explanation, then the stats are bad. Like these are just bad, and your point is bad, and that's not what you do. What you do is you use these to you use all of them and film to make a more informed decision. And even then, there's going to be variables that aren't accounted for in statistics, in analytics, and in film. Because with film, I mean, it's humans make mistakes when they're reading something. Even film junkie experts don't catch everything on film unless they really rewatch it over and over and over again. But the game of football is like super complex, super complicated. So that's why I always say, I'm like, you can't. There's analytics that correlate really well with like success. For example, like the top teams usually are top tier teams in DVOA. I think my buddy Kenan, who's at VV Jones 007, I think is his Twitter handle, has really great information on all this stuff. He's a great follow. But I think he put out a tweet where he did the last like 10 or 15 Super Bowl winners, and they were all in the top 5 or 10 of DVOA. So it's like this metric tracks with success. That's how you can kind of trust it, but it still shouldn't be your like end all be all statistic, and like QBR shouldn't, and all that stuff. You need to use all of them and film. And I think that's what Mike was talking about. Like that's his annoyance, is like somebody will just like be like, oh well, the defense was top 10 in DVOA, and that is all I need for my point, which is that's not true. And that's where the disconnect and the frustration grows.
Yeah, I definitely agree 100% of what you said right there. You definitely need both. You can't just have a one-sided argument in all these debates. So I definitely agree with you on that conversation. And, I'm glad that you guys brought up Carson Wentz, because that is the topic of the story of Colts Nation all year long, especially that we missed the playoffs earlier. Michael, I'm going to drop it to you.
Really quick on Carson, when it comes to DVOA, that is a good for the team aspect. I guess if you just wanted to grade Carson Wentz, you talk about the interception touchdown ratio. But if there is one stat that I actually do hold true, that's QBR for a quarterback. If there's one that I truly hold valuable, is QBR, even the last 2 games of the season. Because everybody's saying recency bias says the last 2 games of the season is the reason why we're all out on Carson Wentz. I mean, against the Raiders, he had a 27.9 QBR. Now, QBR goes from 0 to 100, 50 being, I guess you could say, average. I would say that's still poor. I would say about maybe 60, 65 is about average. But he graded out at a 27.9 against the Raiders. Not good. That's crap. And then you go against the Jaguars. Y'all, he had a 4.3 QBR. That's how bad he was. That stat correlates to it mirrors actual film, because when you get on and watch, I always like to see, as a fan, you watch the game and you don't really truly break it down if you're a fan just like us. So after the film, I've already finished my season evaluation. It was just bad. It was truly bad. Putting on my true football scout glasses, my evaluation glasses, it was bad. The footwork in the pocket was horrible. The feel for the pocket was horrible. Ball placement was bad. And interceptions were horrible. Incompletions that led to ball placement that led to incompletions. It was just all bad on his part. Another thing, when I said, stats lie all the time, I said, man, we can't get anyone to punt the ball. And then someone came back and said, aren't we like top 10 in 3 and outs, forcing 3 and outs? 3 and outs are not the same thing as forcing punts. They're not the same thing. If I'm trying to break it down, 3 and outs are not the same as if a team gets 2 first downs, but you stop them. A 3 and out is a 3 and out. Okay, fine. But in the biggest moments, very rarely did we see punts forced. It doesn't happen all that much. So when, like in the Super Bowl, Joe Burrow and the Bengals are driving, but guess what? They started at the 9. They worked their way to the 49-yard line. Rams get a stop. No field goal, no nothing. Give the ball back to Matthew Stafford. Even in the wild card round, Jimmy G had just thrown an interception. He was, having a bad start. 49er defense, guess what? After 2 first downs, forced the Cowboys to punt. That's what I value. 3 and out, that's a good stat. But I'm not asking about 3 and outs. I'm asking about pure. I consider it, because I just love defense. I'm a big defensive guy. My high school coach always said, and this is where I get it from, make your opponent quit on a drive. That's how you have to look at it. Make them quit on a drive. Oh, you maybe got a first down. Cool. All right. Damn, we just can't get into going. Punt the ball. We'll regroup. We kicked your ass on that drive. We made you quit. The interceptions is the reason why we got off the ball. We had more interceptions we had more turnovers than more forced punts. That is bad. And all in all, that is bad. That means you're not getting off the field. And I hate that. When it comes to the analytics part, how could it be beneficial? I actually sat down with one of the offensive guys, because in high school you got to play like both sides of the ball. Got with my coach and my former coach, and I sat down just like, what is, since analytics is here now, what is your approach in the week of game planning? There is a period where you step away from film and you get into your analytics side. You sit down with your analytics guy. He gives you some graphs. If you want to use a graph between 20 to the 20-yard line, and then the red zone. The red zone is going to be broken up into 6 parts. You're going to have 4 of the outside sidelines, 2 back corners of the end zone, 2 of the sidelines on the outside of the numbers, and then 2 middles. It's going to have a graph of their success in each area of the field. And after so many games, it shows where they like to go to. So that's a plus when we talk about analytics. When you're a coordinator and you're game planning and you get into certain situational football, where are the areas they like to go to? Where is the target area that is, if they're at the 7-yard line but on the right hash, if they're on the 20-yard line but on the left hash, where are they at the 2-yard line, in the middle? It all deviates, and it's a lot of information to take in. I don't think people understand how much information coaches take in and how smart they are. Because my brain was already just hurting after hearing so much of it after a 20-minute talk. So it still variates a little bit, but I thought talking with him and understanding it, how it helps a little bit, definitely. And that's also something where analytics and film come together and it makes sense.
Yeah, that's so. Shout out to a couple of my favorite Colts that no one knows about, but John Park and George Lee. They're the Colts analytics guys. I mean, that's probably 90% of their. I mean, when it comes to what they do, that is not the Twitter analytics that gets thrown around. It is much more targeted and stuff, and it's much more targeted. Probably they do like targeted analysis on each opponent every week, is what I assume, and stuff like that. So it's not just like, like we're really good on third downs, compared to the rest of teams. It's probably like, this opponent is very good at stopping third downs in this situation. Is all very specific to the opponent and stuff like that. And like Mike said, yeah, it gets very, very complicated. So, and ever since, I mean, a lot of it is Frank Reich and the players, obviously. But, the Colts offense has been like at least top 13. I think the only time they were lower than 13 was the Jacoby Brissett, nightmare year.
Mm-hmm.
But a decent portion of that is due to the awesome work that John Park and George Lee do with their analytics, because we all know that Reich leans heavily on them and their work. So, it's got to count for something. But yeah, it's very complicated. It's very difficult, and it's super hard to really like dive into for like the average fan and stuff like that. And I just have way too much free time and to dive into both of these things.
It would have to be like a series. Like that's what it would have to be.
Yeah. Well, to go through and explain each and every one would have to be.
Yes, that would be a long series.
Like that.
Facts.
And if people have any questions, like the guys that he said, like John Parks and that's like a George who?
John Park and George Lee.
George Lee, yeah, those guys. John Park is the guy who kind of gets featured on the with the Next Pick series more often than George Lee, but their jobs is like a year-long job. Like right now in the off season, what is their job? There's no season going on. Yes, there is, because now they know who their opponents are for next year, and if they have the same head coach with the same defensive approach, same offensive approach, they start reviewing their film and getting prepared for the 2022 season. That way they have all these notes. They have all these files of the offense, defense. If there is a new coach like Gus Bradley, he's our new coach. Let's say the Philadelphia Eagles we're going to face next year. They're going to look at Gus Bradley's defensive film and show what does he do? What is his approach, since he's obviously the play caller? What is his approach and how he does certain 3rd and 7, 3 minutes to go. Are you man? Are you soft? Are you going quarter, bracket, whatever the case may be? I don't want to get all technical here, but their job is season long. They dissect film just like the coaches do. And right now, if I had to guess, they're just working on all the opponents for next year. That's really what they're doing, and also working on the Colts as well to give to Frank Reich, hey, this is where we need to get better. This is, you asked for this graph, because Frank Reich does ask. He's even said in press conferences, hey, I asked the guys to grab me this or go look into this and get back with me. Their job is those are some incredibly smart people, I will say, because they use math and everything. I couldn't do it.
That was awesome. That he, that I think it was that week after where everybody was like crucifying him for running the ball or for not running the ball enough or whatever, and then the whole he called 27 consecutive pass plays, but they were RPOs, which are actually run plays like in intention, and it's based on the quarterback reading a forced defender. To switch it to a pass play or not, but so it's like that wasn't true anyway. But he had that press conference where he literally dived into his like analytics and why he called that game. And you just don't see a lot of coaches who have that transparency, and I feel like that was lost on like a lot of fans. But like the media at large was like, you don't get this much like in-depth look into how his game plan went. So it was pretty awesome that he went into all that stuff. And I would say that probably the Colts like analytics department is primarily focusing on the Colts shortcomings in areas to improve and their own like analysis for right now. And then before they jump into like the opponents, but yeah, for sure. Their work is probably year round on the clock, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate both of you guys for joining us tonight and giving people that don't know about film or stats the insight that they do need, because definitely I took a handful of knowledge from you two guys, and that's why I invited you both, because you both guys know more than a little bit of the the comment section guys or the Twitter guys. But before we get out of here, I gotta let you guys know where they can find you. So Jake, you can go first. Where can they find you if they want to look for you?
Yeah, if you don't mind, lots of charts and nihilistic Colts tweets. You can find me at ColtsGuy505. That's my Twitter handle. I just have Twitter. I don't have anything else.
That's fine. I definitely can find you there. And Michael, I already know where you're at, but some people may not know. Michael, where can we find you?
Y'all can find me at Michael Pevia, Pevia, Michael Pevia, capital TBS, standing for the Blue Stable.
All right. That's where you can find them. And also, check out the YouTube channel for him. Jake doesn't have one, but Michael does. Check out the Blue Stable YouTube. Appreciate all you guys. And the website, they do have a Blue Stable. We do have a Blue Stable website. Go ahead and check that out. Articles drop pretty much weekly, fresh content, so check that out as well. But this is Marcus from Culture Shock. That's Jake, and this is Michael Terrazas, and we are out.